Everyone's got to find their place in this world. When you find the right place, it can be an amazing thing. It can be even heartwarming. But when you're in the wrong place, it can be absolutely brutal. We will take a look at both sides of that and a little bit more today. Another episode of Liberty Dad Podcast. Let's get in it. All right. Welcome to another morning episode of the Liberty Dad Podcast, a discussion on politics and culture. For tuning in live, and thank you so much for giving me your time so early. Awesome. Let's get into this. We've got a couple things. What I'm going to do today is a little bit different. Normally, I separate my musings from some positive news, but I'm actually going to kind of do both today and just kind of see how that works. So, first, we're going to talk about some musings, just some different clips of things that I came across over the last few days or so, and see what we come up with there. So, let's go to the first one here, and this clip is a clip of speaker. It is Speaker Mike Johnson, and he's talking about the January 6th issue. Like it hasn't gone away yet. We are still dealing with basically a bunch of rowdy people at best. Okay, like it's insane how much energy and effort the United States government is putting into this. It is still going on. And when I look back, well, when I first saw the January 6th, I was like, okay, well, this, some inappropriate things I didn't, shouldn't have happened. But for the most part, it's just a protest. And we're putting a lot of energy into it. And I will say this, I've seen this comment. This is not my own thought, but I actually agree with it quite a bit. A lot of people will point out that on one hand, um, people will say, "Hey, you think you can fight against the U.S. government with just your AR-15? Why they have tanks and they have drones and all these all this great equipment. Like you're no match for the U.S. government." But then here we are with the same kind of people who will basically say, "Well, our whole government was almost overtaken by a handful of grandmas." Right? Like, it was crazy. Like, they didn't even have AR-15s, like, right? Like, they were unarmed, and yet we're still talking as if we lost our country on January 6th. It's kinda wild. It's kind of a wild when you think of it in that perspective, and you're like, "Well, wait a minute. So, what would have happened had they had AR-15s?" Not that I'm saying we should. Don't get me wrong, folks. I oppose violence unless it's absolutely necessary. And while I have many grievances with the government, I do not believe we're anywhere close to where we need to recreate the days of old with violence. I think there is plenty of room to deal with things without even going close to that issue. All right. So let's see what we've got from Mike Smith here. Mike Smith. Goodness, Mike Johnson. I don't even know where that came from. All right. It's early in the morning and maybe that coffee hasn't kicked in yet. Not that it matters because I drink decaf. Go ahead and flame me all you want. All right, let's see what we got here. Oh, I haven't added him to the screen. There we are. And let's hear what he has to say.
Trust the American people to draw their own conclusions. They should not be dictated by some narrative and accept that as fact. So they can review the tapes themselves. We're going through a methodical process of releasing them as quickly as we can. As you know, we have to blur some of the faces of persons who participated in the events of that day because we don't want them to be retaliated against and to be charged by the DOJ and to have other concerns and problems. So that's a slow process to get it done. We're working steadily on it. We've hired additional.
Other concerns and problems. That's interesting. And then blur the faces. Like he's literally talking about being transparent with the public, but we need to blur out faces. But why? Why do we need to blur out faces? I know he says like we don't want them to be charged by the DOJ, but if they stop, like this is the this is the government, this is the Congress. We're talking about. We're not talking about like, hey, um, one agency has all this information and another one has equal power. We're literally talking about the U.S. federal government, and the U.S. federal government can say, case closed. Don't even go looking. Don't need to. End of story. They don't need to blur out faces. This is absurd. This idea that we need to blur out faces. Now, I've seen some people suggest that maybe they're blurring out faces of FBI agents or some other government agent that was there undercover. Seems like it could be a legitimate argument. We know that FBI and other agencies infiltrate. This happens all the time. This is no secret. And there's not much to argue about either. It does happen. The question is, why would we want to do that? Well, if you're an FBI agent and you're going undercover as a regular citizen, then chances are this is not the first event that you've attended. You've attended others. So they wouldn't want people to make the connection and say, hey, wait a minute. I remember seeing that guy over at this event. And when they start seeing the same person at, specific events, and maybe we see that the same person is consistently not being charged or whatever. Anyway, the point here is that the American people could do their own sleuthing. And it sounds like he doesn't want the American people to do their own sleuthing. It sounds more like what he wants to do is redact information just so that the American people have enough, so that they have enough information to maybe run with and get on podcasts and talk about, but not enough information to actually put any real serious dots together. So I oppose this. I think, hey, look, you've got these tapes, put them out there. Let the Americans do their sleuthing. Maybe they find something, maybe they don't. And if they find something, well, that's the way it is. That's how it works. But and it's kind of interesting that the whole issue of January 6th was people didn't trust their government to do the right thing. Whether you agree with it or not, the fact is a lot of people disagreed with the government and they felt like there were things that were happening in the government that were not appropriate, that needed to be addressed. And so then the government's going to go and collect all this information and then say, okay, we're going to release it back to the people, but we're going to redact certain information. We're going to blur out some faces. You don't need to worry about that. We'll take care of that. Oh, okay. All right. So enough about that. I think that basically put out as much information as you can possibly, like, if it's not literally the name and of an agent that's doing some secret work in another country and their identity has to be if it's not that, right? Then, or if it's not, hey, here are secret plans that we're going to, we're at war and this is our secret plan that we're like, there's not like most of what the government tries to hide, I think is related to um, workings that the American people may not particularly like. I think that's generally what you're hiding. But if it's actually for real, a matter of national security that might actually lead to some real harm of people, then I would be okay with it. But I just don't. I don't have the confidence that that's what the government. I think they overdo it quite a bit. Anyway, we're gonna move on from that. Enough pontificating there. We've got some interesting stuff. There's two clips. Now I didn't watch the I did not watch the presidential debate last night. Instead, I actually had went to a friend of mine, a guy that I've actually have another podcast. It's kind of in limbo at the moment, but him and I have a podcast. It's called the Political Bombcast. This effort is one where the goal is to reach out and raise the voice of people within the Black community here in Jacksonville. And then it's my opportunity to engage with them as a libertarian, but not preach at them. So this would be an interesting endeavor. We got it started. There were three of us. One of us had to bail because he went back to school. And, I have no ill will toward him for doing that because, hey, look, at the end of the day, you need to be able to take care of you. And if you need to go further your education so that that will lead to more opportunities for you to take care of you and your, and your family, then by all means, right? But that did kind of put a wrinkle into things. And so we've been pretty quiet on that front. But the other guy, he invited me out to an event. So he's a local activist and I don't always agree with everything that he does, right? Or his positions. In fact, there's quite a few positions that we have strong disagreement on. He is what he calls himself a reparationist, and I am not. To put pretty simple. And so, but I went out to his event last night, and it was quite interesting because I thought I was just coming to like a community event where some community folk were going to be talking and maybe even coming up with ideas on how they wanted to address particular topics. Well, it was that. It was actually a little bit more, funny enough, because they had invited a local council member, and the council member was not able to make it, and instead he sent his aide, which is cool. Like I'm glad that he didn't entirely not show up. Like he had representation. But and I had initially was like when I got there and I was like, okay, here's what's going on tonight. Cool. And initially, I was just like, "Okay, I'll be quiet. I'm not gonna really say anything." But then they went around, they gave in they said, "Alright, everybody introduce yourself, why you're here." And so I was like, "Okay, well, this is interesting." So I was like, "Alright, no big deal. I'll just kind of keep it lighthearted." Said, "I'm DL, I'm Anthony's friend. I'm the chair of the Libertarian Party. So while I'm not here entirely on business because I'm the chair, I'm kind of always at a political event on some level of business." That's all I said. No big deal. So then, a little bit later, after the aide gave her speech, she was talking and people were asking her questions and giving comments. And one woman was like, "Look, we don't trust." And when she says we, she means the Black community. She said, "We don't trust the council members. None of them." They're all like, "Yeah, yeah." And so then that led me to think of a question. And then I was like, all right, I was like, I'm not going to stay silent. I'm going to ask this question. And it was getting a little bit, I don't want to say it was getting a little aggressive. Okay. But like people weren't angry. They weren't like yelling and standing up and screaming at her or anything like that. It wasn't that level of aggressiveness, but people were, you know, they were unloading some of their grievances. Not necessarily to do with this particular council member, but with council members in general and a few specific ones. And so I asked her when I had an opportunity, I said, "Look, I'm gonna ask you a question, and then I'm gonna give you a comment related to that question. The comment's gonna be slightly aggressive, so I just want to prepare you." And so I said, "A moment ago, this woman had said we, the Black community, don't trust council members, none of them." And I said, "So given that, and given that other people agreed with her, I said, what is the city council doing to restore faith with the Black community?" And then I said, before you answer, I want to point out something that at the beginning, and I was talking to the aide, I said, you told the audience here that the council member was scheduled to come out, but then didn't come out because the council president had asked him to be at a different meeting. And so he went. And I said, the insinuation is that, hey, his boss asked him to be at a meeting. And I said, but when I look around, what I see are his bosses because city council members work at the behest of the public, the citizens. And in my mind, the citizens should take priority if you don't already have something scheduled, right? Or if it's not an absolute emergency. So, I kind of put that out there. I was just like, look, what are you doing to restore the faith with the black community? And let me point out that it's not off on a good foot here because instead of coming out yourself, you sent your aide, which is better than nothing, but it still doesn't really speak to, hey, I'm here for the people. And I'm pointing this out, folks. We're going to get back to the presidential debate and we'll talk about that. But I'm pointing this out because we need to hold our local representatives accountable. And we need to really think about the things that we're asking them and insist upon. And we need to, in some ways, stand on their necks, right? So we need to hold them accountable. Now, I want to pause on that because I'm going to come back to this idea of holding them accountable, going out to meetings, so on and so forth. Okay. I want to shift now back a little bit because these two are not entirely separate. I'm going to shift back to the debate. And I want to show you two clips. And these are clips of Vivek Ramaswamy. And apparently he was really going hard after Nikki Haley. And these two clips, well, let's just say I found them amusing. We'll put it that way. So let's bring up this first clip here. All right, and let's see what he has to say, and then I'll comment on it, and then we'll play the next clip, and then I'll comment on it.
We're marching towards fascism under Biden. Jack Smith has subpoenaed every last retweet that someone has issued from Donald Trump in the year 2020. The only person more fascist than the Biden regime now is Nikki Haley, who thinks the government should identify every one of those individuals with an ID. That is not freedom. That is fascism. And she should come nowhere near the levers of power, let alone the White House.
All right. So if you don't know what he's talking about, a while back, Nikki Haley said that there should be no anonymity on the internet and that everybody should be forced to use their real name. I think this is an absolute tyrannical, horrible, awful idea. Now, let me tell you, I'm not a fan necessarily of anonymity because there are a lot of people that use anonymity to um, just just stir up trouble, right? Like, and it's not always clear that they're even on the same side as they're stirring up trouble. So sometimes I'll see people post stuff, and I'm like, wait a minute. Are you somebody who is anonymous and you really believe that and you just don't have the nerve to put your name and face to it, or for whatever reason you feel like you need to be anonymous? Or are you anonymous because you actually don't believe any of that and you're using anonymity to try to make it look like there are people or more people than there are who believe in this kind of thing? So think of it this way. Imagine you're on Twitter X and you see somebody and they say some really racist thing. But you look and you see that their profile is like, I don't know, a picture of whatever, a picture of some country boy that, from a movie or something like that, right? And and then their name is, like Country Boy Super Patriot. I don't know, making stuff up here. And so you don't know who this person is. You don't know if it's really Fred Smith that lives down the road from you. And so you see this really racist comment, and then you're like, oh man, I can't believe there's all these racists out here. Well, I don't know if that's an actual racist or if that's somebody who's just like, you know what, I'm going to get online and I'm going to create this persona of somebody who is racist and just be one more voice that makes it look like there's a lot of racists out there. And so it's very difficult sometimes to identify exactly what the angle is. So this is the reason that I don't particularly care for anonymity On the other hand, you might remember one of our founding fathers, Benjamin Franklin, who got his start essentially as a with anonymity. He would write letters to the paper, the newspaper, when he was like 17. And I can't remember the name that he used, but he used a fictitious name. And the reason he did that, I believe, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I believe if I've got my history correct, he did that because at the time he was a bit young and he was having trouble getting his stuff published. So he presented this fake person so that it would be more of like an adult and more legit, and that this would get published, right? So he had a good purpose for it, um, and but eventually, as he grew older, things started coming out under the name of Benjamin Franklin. I don't think he used, I think it was basically only in his early days that he used it. So there are good, legitimate reasons. And when I say legitimate, I mean good reasons. There are good and positive reasons for anonymity. And then there are negative and bad reasons to use anonymity. However, that is not for the government to sort out. It is inappropriate. And that's putting it insanely too lightly. It's a horrible fascist idea for the government to say nobody can be anonymous on the internet. We need to know who you are. And I say, no, you don't. So he was absolutely right to take aim at Nikki Haley for that. All right. So then let me let me play his next clip here. And this next clip again is taking aim at Nikki Haley. And then we're going to bring this back to last night when I was at this local community event. All right, so let's pull that back up on the screen here. There we are. Here's another clip and go.
Foreign policy experience is not the same as foreign policy wisdom.
Okay, stop right there. Like when I heard that, I was like, that is so profound. And like I wanted to play the whole clip, but I just can't get past this without talking about it. Foreign policy experience doesn't mean that you have wisdom. And the reason in government that this is important to really think about in this way is that there's a lot of people that have experience, and just because they have experience, their experience may be doing the behest of somebody else. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you have wisdom. You might be saying you might have the experience of making things happen, but then you have to deal with the consequences of those. And like, okay, no big deal. Well, the wisdom would be maybe the consequences are telling us not to do that. Right. So it like we all know, we've all seen a boss that has been in their position for many years. And we're like, he doesn't know his head from his ass. Then we've had a boss, and sometimes they've even had less experience than the jokers that we don't like, and they just seem to be so good at it. They like you bring them a problem, and they resolve it in a great way, and you're happy, and you're like, man, I like that boss. It's the same concept here. You've got people that may not know their head from their ass, and then you've got people that are wise. And we need to make the distinction, and we need to stop talking about so and so's got so much foreign policy experience, because your experience might be that when we take a good look at it, we say this experience is garbage. You should have been somewhere else. So let's see what he says.
I want everybody at home to note that I was the first person to say we need a reasonable peace deal in Ukraine. Now a lot of the neocons are quietly coming along to that position, with the exceptions of Nikki Haley and Joe Biden, who still support this, what I believe is pointless war in Ukraine. And I think those with foreign policy experience, one thing that Joe Biden and Nikki Haley have in common is that neither of them could even state for you 3 provinces in eastern Ukraine that they want to send our troops to actually fight for. Look at that. This is what I want people to understand. These people have, I mean, she has no idea what the hell the names of those provinces are, but she wants to send our sons and daughters and our troops and our military equipment to go fight it. So reject this myth that they've been selling you, that somebody had a cup of coffee stint at the UN and then makes $8 million after, has real foreign policy experience. It takes an outsider to see this through. Look at the blank expression. She doesn't know the names of the provinces that she wants to actually fight for. And there's a puppet masters right there. The donors right there that are playing about the puppet masters.
I mean, that was brutal, man. That was rough. Like, it's one thing to say, hey, there's a distinction between foreign policy experience and and foreign policy wisdom. It's also one thing to say, look, I think my opponent is somebody that has a lot of experience, but maybe not a lot of wisdom. And then it's an entirely different thing to basically, no, he outright said it, to say, look at the blank stare on her face. Not only did I just accuse her of being unable to identify three areas on this map, three locations or three provinces, but now look at her face after I said it. She doesn't know. Like that is just that is brutal. And like good. Good for him because we need people like that, you know. There's a time and a place to be brutal. Let me tell you a quick story. It's kind of unrelated. Because humans can be brutal like that, right? When I was in about sixth or seventh grade, I went to a Catholic school, and there was a wooded area next to our Catholic school, and that's where everybody would go to have a little fight. Usually, it was either that or a park down the road. And so, two girls got into it. It was like a cool girl and not so cool girl. I don't know what their beef was, but they were having some beef. And so everybody's like, "All right, we're going over to the woods." So we all went into the woods, and there's like a little clearing in the middle of it, and that's where these two girls were going to fight. Okay, so they got in their fight. Now we're at a Catholic school, so we've got the girls are wearing their skirts and like a blue or a white shirt, and the boys are wearing slacks and blue or white shirt. So the two girls fight, and it's clear that the cool girl, if you will, the popular girl, I guess, the popular and unpopular girl, the popular girl was winning, and she basically won the fight. Now it was a simple schoolyard fight, nothing dramatic about it. But here's what happened right afterward. So afterward, the popular girl looks down and she sees that there's a button missing on her shirt. She was like, "My button is missing." Now, this fight's basically over, right? Like she embarrassed her, or whatever. And she's like, "You find it now." And then the unpopular girl like crawled around on her hands and knees looking for a button. And I will never forget this. Like it was humiliating. It was totally brutal. Like that was more brutal than the actual fight itself, forcing her to get down and find this button, crawling on her hands and knees. And I hope the girl recovered from that because I seriously doubt that whatever they were fighting about was worth all of that. So we can be brutal, and there are times when it is totally not appropriate, totally unacceptable. And looking back, that was a horrible moment for humanity in a sense. And we should teach our children to be better than that. Of course, I mean, if you're going to get into a fight, there's no need to humiliate after the fact. But when you're on the debate stage and you want to be president, and you have what I would consider to be terrible ideas, I think it's absolutely appropriate to not only call them out, but then just to rub it in and just dig right on in. And he did. He was like, look at her face. Look at that blank stare. Like she knows it." And then he went out. He was like, "Look, the donors out there." Like, like he was tough, and I can appreciate it. Now I'm not supporting Vivek Ramaswamy. It's all but guaranteed that I will support whoever the Libertarian Party nominates as their candidate for president. But that doesn't mean I can't appreciate this. And from my understanding, from what I've seen on Twitter, apparently he took a few swipes at Chris Christie as well. Now, I do want to play this back. I thought this was really funny. Where is it? Right about here. So we're going to back this up a little bit. Let me put it back up on the screen because I want to show you something that I thought was really, really cool. Then we're going to get back to the last night's thing.
Of those provinces are, but he wants to send our
What's
sons
this?
and
Right
daughters
here.
and our troops and our
Look at
military
Ron
equipment to go
DeSantis.
fight it. So reject this myth that they've been selling you that somebody had a cup of coffee stint at the UN and then makes $8 million after has real foreign policy experience.
I don't know what Ron DeSantis was thinking at this moment, but I feel like what he was doing is like, oh, Is that how you is that how you hammer at somebody? Because remember, he just had this debate with Governor Newsom, which I think he did not do so well. And I think Governor Newsom did much better than he did. And I don't like a thing that he said. I just think that in terms of debate, in terms of being able to handle it and take the swipes and then give them back, I think for the most part, Gavin Newsom beat him. And I think that if they ended up being, if for some crazy reason, Governor Newsom and Governor DeSantis were the candidates that were running for president, I'm pretty sure that DeSantis is going to lose, because I don't think that he's prepared to go after the likes of somebody like Governor Newsom. Now, Vivek Ramaswamy, he seems very capable. His rhetoric, his delivery, his energy, like it's there. Like he's going to be, in my opinion, a formidable opponent. Now, a lot of this is going to be about who the donors want, like he did say, and this is kind of a show. And some of my peers will say that what we're watching here is really just who gets to be the vice president, and that may be the case. But I would say that, Vivek is showing us exactly how to speak truth to power, even if I don't necessarily agree with him on many things. And like his idea that we have a northern border crisis is kind of absurd to me, and several other things. But that's how we should be speaking to power. So let me take this back to last night. Last night people were angry and they were speaking out. They were unfortunately speaking to an aide. So the aide has only a limited amount of power of what she can, what she can say and promise, right? Because she is not the council member. The council member could promise certain things, at least for himself. She cannot promise on his behalf. And people did recognize it. They, at the end, they said, "Hey, look, we want to thank you for coming out and hearing us. We know we were a bit rowdy. We know we were a bit angry, and you took it like a champ." Right. And they weren't directing it at her. But we need to go out to our city council meetings, us regular folks. We need to go out to town halls. You don't have to go to all of them, but just make it a point. If we all make it a point to go out more often, let's imagine there's almost 1 million people in Jacksonville. So let's just say that half of them, about 500,000 people, said, "I'm going to go out to City Hall or some, government, town hall, whatever, city council, town hall, any of those kind of things. I'm going to go out to one, just one in the year." That's 500,000 people that would go out to one. Imagine how they, how impressive that would be in terms of numbers, because I would only have to go out once, but then 499,999 people would also go out. And there's only so many events. So that means we would end up filling up some of these events. And this is how you speak truth to power. You can be bold. You can be, in some ways, maybe you can be brutal. You don't have to be brutal all the time. Sometimes maybe there's a time to go out and thank them for something that they've done, right? Like in this particular case, that's not the situation. But there may be a situation where like, "Hey, you know what? I'm out here and I'm, giving you guys hell, but today I want to thank you for listening, for doing what we asked as citizens." So Vivek is showing us exactly how we need to be. We need to articulate as the best we can, and we need to deliver that message in a way that gets heard and that gets a response. And he's getting a response, right? Like a lot of people really enjoyed what he had to say and him taking Nikki Haley to task, self included. So that wraps up the musings portion of this podcast. I want to talk about two more things. I want to show you a couple more videos really quickly that I thought were exciting. We're going to shift over to positive news. So now, we're done with the angry politics. We're done with the "ha, he got her," right? Now we want to leave this episode today on a positive note. So I want to show you a couple of things that I think, just two things that I think are really awesome. Let's do this one first. So let me bring this over here real quick. This is an interesting story that is out of Stockton, California. And this involves a 16, I think it's a 16-year-old girl, but we'll see. So let's pull that up on the screen and then we'll see what's going on over in Stockton.
A local 16-year-old is bringing smiles to seniors' faces, one pair of socks at a time.
CBS 13's Zachary Gray reports the teen is gaining some unlikely pen pals along the way. Clubs, gloves, and golf balls. When heading out on the golf course, those are usually some of the essentials. But for 16-year-old Elle Gianelli, there's another thing to add to the checklist.
I play in silly socks. I think it lightens my mood, and it's just a little good luck charm for me.
It's her signature look. Every time she looks down, it's a reminder to keep on smiling. In 2020, that reminder was more important than ever. Just a few weeks before the world shut down, Gianelli went on a field trip to a senior living facility. Just a 7th grader at the time, Gianelli was touched by her interactions with the residents. When the pandemic hit, she knew she needed to do something for them.
What's something I love that brings a smile to my face and might bring something to others, and that was silly socks.
She created Socks for Seniors to send fun socks to local nursing and assisted living facilities. 2 years later, she sent over 3,000 socks to facilities across the nation. She includes a note with each pair of socks, sharing her contact in case any seniors need someone to talk to. Along the way, she's gained several pen pals.
And they wanted me to finish the back for them. And so we sent it back and forth to each other.
At just 16 years old, Gianelli has been featured in TV interviews, even appearing in People magazine. But the reward of Socks for Seniors is much more than that.
And hearing like the response, hey, I just wanted to let you know that gentleman we posted yesterday, he passed away today. And the last thing he was so excited about was that little pair of socks.
For Gianelli, it's about showing these folks that someone still cares.
You never know what someone's going through. So maybe something really small, such as socks, can do something for someone. Or me writing back to them, knowing that they have someone and that they're not alone and they'll get through it.
All right. That's a heartwarming story. It really is. I mean, I want you to think about some of the elements of this. We criticize, at least some of us olds. I like to call us olds. I'm 45. I'm not really that old, but I'm getting there. And we like to criticize a lot of people, a lot of these young people who want to be like TikTok stars and YouTube stars and stuff like that. And to be honest with you, there's really nothing wrong with having those kind of dreams. We all had them when I was young. We wanted to be rock stars and we wanted to be movie stars. And, now things have, the medium has changed a little bit. And now kids want to be, many kids want to be YouTube stars and all that. And the same thing then applies today is that, hey, you can still be a star for somebody. And this young lady has become a star for a lot of older folk who are in nursing homes. And not only that, she got featured, here on the news, here on this podcast, so she's getting some fame in a sense for doing good work, just simply doing good work, just seeing a need. And here's the thing about this. This is what she's doing is what, maybe she has a political identity. Maybe she doesn't. I don't really know, but I will say what she is doing is very libertarian. This is part of what it means to be a libertarian, to go out and do things in the community for your fellow citizens, your fellow man, your fellow woman, without the government. We don't need the government to hand out socks. We can just have a 16-year-old girl who decides, you know what? This is something I have a passion for. I'm going to do it. And the rest of us can maybe chip in a few bucks to help her out. Or maybe even make it her full-time job, whatever, right? But we don't need the government. We can do things on our own, folks. And this is a very good example of multiple things, really. It's a good example of a young person finding a good direction in life, doing something for fellow, for people. I thought it was really interesting in that clip where they were like, look, this man, he passed away, but he passed away today, but he was extremely excited just yesterday about getting this pair of socks. And yeah, they're silly. They're goofy. Would I wear them? I mean, maybe if my son made them, but would I wear them in general? Probably not. But that's not the point. It doesn't matter whether I would wear them or not. What matters is the people that she's sending them to, are they finding joy out of it? And what better thing can you think of really than to provide somebody joy in the last days of their life? I think that's amazing. And I think she deserves huge applause for that. Can I do that? I think I could do that. Let's see if I get the button right. There we go. Oh, there we go. Right? So, all right. So let's move on to the last item here. Now, this item kind of is close to home in a sense. Um, but let's see what we got. And I didn't quite catch. I forgot where this is actually happening. I think they'll say it in this clip.
At elementary schools across Louisville, Kentucky,
Louisville.
some mornings start with a big surprise. Hugs, high fives, smiles, and support. Once a month, the Flash Dads show up, a program started in Jefferson County Public Schools 7 years ago. Dozens of dads with all kinds of jobs. Army veteran James Bogan and Police Lieutenant Roger Collins are regulars. What's a Flash Dad?
It's just dads, community members showing up for students who sometimes don't have anybody show up for them.
Been with the program since day one. My grandson went to the school that they were going to, so I felt it was a great opportunity for me to surprise him as well. And I tell you, it's contagious. I've been doing it ever since.
What keeps you coming back?
The kids, the students, the energy.
Oh, my man.
Erica Walker is the principal at Audubon Traditional Elementary. It sounds like such a simple thing, you know, a bunch of dads greeting everybody.
Men's presence in elementary school is just amazing. Everyone doesn't have a father in their home, a positive role model in their home, so that when they do see these men in schools, you know, they step in and they're able to give the students the encouragement and the motivation they need to be here.
A joy, too, for the Flash Dads.
Nothing better than partying with, 300, 400 elementary school students at 9 o'clock in the morning.
And they're looking for mentors. These kids, they need these mentors. And that's what we do. So we continue to reach out to these students and let them know we're not there just that day. We're there whenever you need us. It's not a one-day event. It's a lifetime event.
I love it. The district has just started a Morning with Moms program, too.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated
All
on
right.
breaking news and top stories.
There we go. All right. So this is amazing. Almost brings a tear to my eye. I'm gonna try not to, get all, the dust up in my office here. There's clearly lots of dust. Why do I like this? Why do I find this so why does this touch me so much? Well, I did have a dad growing up, so I didn't have that issue. But I have worked with plenty of teens over the years and who, either didn't have a father figure or they had a dad and maybe they weren't so good or, what have you. And I know I have a personal connection to to people that haven't had this kind of a thing. And I think it's so important. I think one of the things that she said in there, she said, these dads showing up are great mentors, and some of these kids don't have dads, and it's just this exciting thing for them to know that somebody cares and that men are important. I think that in society right now, I would argue that men kind of take a beating. We have this toxic masculinity idea. We have all these ideas. We make fun of men. Men are aloof, yada, yada, yada. And I think the reality is that men are absolutely critical in the lives of young people. And when I was doing mentoring here in Jacksonville, I went to an organization called Daniel Kids. And I said, hey, I want to be a mentor. And I went through the process. And when I was going through some of their training, they said, look, we have plenty of women. We don't have a problem with too few women. And what they did was they would match women with girls and men with boys. They said, we don't have it. We're a shortage of men. We need more men. And it's really sad. And I mentored a kid, and he is now a man himself, and he's married and just recently had a child. I keep in touch on Facebook and I see what he's doing. And it's nice to know that I in some way played a role in that. And so to see all these men go out to the schools and just do this small little thing like, hey, we're Flash Dads. We're going to go out and we're just going to high five you as you come into school and let you know that we're there for you and just kind of uplift you this one day a month. I think that is so awesome. That is exciting. And when I talk about men kind of get crapped on and we should do something about it, I actually oppose many of this, this kind of like almost retaliation type attitude where we got to fight back feminism and all this other stuff. I don't believe we need to do that. I believe we need to do this. We need to do flash dads. We need to do mentoring. That's what we need to do. We need to show the world how valuable we are by being a value to people, whether it's our own families or somebody else who maybe has a struggling family. That's the place for men. That's how we fight the ideas and notions of toxic masculinity and some of this feminism that I think is toxic in itself to men and women relationships. Right? That's how we fight back against it. You don't have to fight back against the feminists themselves. Just go out and be a value add to those around you. And this is one example of doing just that. It was awesome when I saw it. I was like, wait, like I saw the headline, Flash Dads show up at school. And I was like, I don't even know what this is, but it sounds awesome already when I was looking for positive news. And I was like, this is going to be awesome. So I will link to everything in the show notes. I want to thank you for watching and hope that you found this episode informative and inspiring. I want you to catch me every morning, Monday through Friday, 7 a.m., bright and early, for an informed discussion on politics and culture. And then again on Sundays at 7 p.m., where my co-host, Susan Hogarth, and I, we look across the vastness of tyranny in the United States, and we bring to you the news of what's going on in the Libertarian Party. So, and I think that episode is starting to grow. I posted some things on social media, and it got a lot of conversation. So I think even that is going to start, getting some more attention, and hopefully everything that I do will get better and better. And to make that happen, make sure that you're subscribed to my YouTube channel or my Rumble channel, or both. Go to youtube.libertydad.com, rumble.libertydad.com, subscribe. But more importantly, after you subscribe, drop me a comment. Let me know how I'm doing. You got a tip? Throw it out there because I want to hear from you. I check out the comments. I really do. Last but not least, I want you to remember that if you are a champion of liberty, your business is people and your product is liberty. Have a great week. But for now, I'm out.